Bonjour à tous. Hi, everyone. Isabelle Leroux. I'm the president of the Federation Alliance Française USA, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this new event organized by the Federation. Today, we will discuss with Nelly Alard about her new book, The Life You Had Imagined. Before to give them the floor, please, I would like to share with you some information regarding our network. We are the largest Alliance Française network in the world, which represent about 25,000 learners of French each year. As you can see on the map, the 105 chapters are all over the US. So if you want to learn French, practice your French, or if you want to attend multiple cultural events, you can see that there is always an Alliance Française chapter close to you. Regarding the Federation itself, all our information and all our cultural program is on our website, afusa.org. The next one will be in July. We will celebrate Bastille Day. It's going to take place on July 13. Bastille Day is on the 14th, but this event will take place on the 13th. And we will welcome again Roger Mamert. I know that he's very popular, and he will talk about myth and mystery of the Bastille. In terms of logistics and format, so please stay on mute during the presentation. We recommend to stay on speaker view. You can put your question in the chat. We will have time at the end of the conversation to take your question in the chat. If you're facing any technical issue, we recommend you to sign back after a couple of minutes and use the original link that you used to log in right now. The event is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel, and it's a maximum total 1 hour event. But it's time now for me to give the floor to Florence Klein. She's the co-founder, CEO, and host of Startup Vision TV and co-founder of CIMI. And she's the moderator today. And I invite you, Florence, to introduce us. Nelly Alard.
Yes, hello, Isabelle. Thank you so much, and thank you for having us, Nelly. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you today for this great event.
Well, thank you to have me.
Welcome with us. What I wanted to share with our audience first. You did a fascinating video with images of all the people we're going to talk about today. And I would like everybody to see this video if they didn't see it until now.
In biographies of Elisabeth of Austria, the story of the Sasto child is at most the subject of a footnote. The author mentions casually that in 1914, a certain Caroline Zanardi-Landi published a book, The Secret of an Empress, in which she claims to be the Empress's secret daughter, born unobserved during a hunting trip in Normandy, and raised by her mother in secret away from the Austrian court. Occasionally, it is also said that the daughter of this Countess Zanardi-Landi became a Hollywood star in the 30s under the name Elisa Landi. On a subject of such great importance, I'm not the kind of girl who settles for footnotes.
Oh, I love you.
In highly unlikely fashion, my two childhood passions were being reunited, Hollywood and Sissi, the secrets of the Empress and the beginnings of cinema, history with a big H, and romantic fiction. One day I came across a Facebook page by Caroline Thomas, an acting teacher who was living in New York. I had found Elisa Landi's daughter.
And I don't think my grandmother lied. She never lied to my mother. Her letters don't have any lies in them. She wasn't a liar.
All my life, people had asked me why I was so interested in that story. My obstinacy in trying to solve that mystery, they said, was even more intriguing to them than the mystery itself. This book is my attempt to answer them.
After this great video, of course, you want to discover even more about the book. And this book is about a mystery, as you mentioned in the video. You know, the question is, did Empress Elisabeth of Austria, better known as Sissi, give birth to an illegitimate child in Normandy? So for members in our audience who haven't read the book yet, and I recommend they do after that, can you say why you had this absolute surge of writing this story?
Well, it all started by my fascination as a little girl, a young girl, by the character of Sissi. But as a difference with the other girls my age, I didn't get to know her through the movies with Romy Schneider, because I didn't go to the movies. I didn't watch TV much as a child. I read a lot. And I actually had discovered Sissi through books, and it's not before long later that I discovered that the books were actually written from the movie. But anyway, but I read everything about her, as you know, and I very soon suspected that there were more in this character, that there was something more that just the character played by Romy Schneider, the young princess, and so on. So, and then when I discovered that story, just as it's said in the trailer, as in a footnote in one of Elisabeth's biography, you know, first of all, Sasto was in France, so nobody even knew that Sissi came to France once. And the idea that she would have had this child, this secret child in France, I mean, it was fascinating to me. But I didn't believe it was true, because all the historians said it was false. So I still was very interested in the character. I knew there was much more. She was eccentric. She was very ahead of her time in many ways. She was very different from the little corny Sissi that we see in Ernst Marischka's movies. But then it's not until long later, when the internet, because there was nothing was to be found about either Caroline Zanardi-Landi, the woman who wrote that book, or her daughter Elisa Landi. It took me, years before, because of the internet, because I started to find things on the internet in the libraries all over the world, and that finally, when I discovered Caroline Thomas, Elisa Landi's daughter, and I found her through Facebook page, and I wrote to her, "Are you by any chance Elisa Landi's daughter?" And she said yes. And then I went to New York to meet her, and she told me she believed the story. That was just beyond all my dreams.
Very interesting what you say, and I want to follow up on that, because your book it's like your life at that time, writing this book, it's like a quest. It's almost like a police investigation. It lasted a good part of your life, with ups and a lot of downs, because of all what happened and everything. Tell us what were your feelings when doing this research, because it took so many years.
Well, in the book, of course, I make it seem as if it was my whole life. It was not. I mean, in the meantime, I managed to have a career, to have 3 children, to have a life. I mean, it was more like a hobby, like nothing much happened during years, except that I read everything that has been written on the subject, but not much happened. It's really at the beginning of the 90s with the internet, and that I started to find on eBay old movies by Elisa Landi and the books that she wrote, because she was also a writer besides being a movie star. And finally, as I said, Caroline Thomas, that finally the whole thing kind of, it's like, it all came back to the shore. It's like, after the Titanic, after, how do you say, naufrage?
Went down the seas, yeah.
Yeah, suddenly everything just came back to the shore. I mean, old books and suddenly, and then, when I discovered that Elisa Landi's daughter herself believed in the story, that was suddenly I started to think, well, maybe after all, maybe that was true, you know. In the meantime, I have found and read in German, although I'm not very good in German, but I, you know, what you do, you know, when you're passionate about something, you can even read a diary in German, even if you're not good at it. But and I discovered that there were many dark sides to this empress. She could be very cruel. She was extremely, probably not selfish, but egocentric, very
We'll
eccentric.
talk about her a little bit later, but I wanted to focus on the quest, you know, on the research and everything. But it's fascinating. And also the book is a tale about women, you know. You have the center, which is Empress Elisabeth, one of her sisters, Queen Mary of Naples, her niece, Baroness Marie Valercy, her lady-in-waiting, Countess Marie Pestetix, and of course, Countess Caroline Zanardi, you talked about, and Elisa Landi. And men are like, you know, almost incidental characters in the book.
That's right.
And in the story, because they are all like a powerful group.
That's right. I mean, that in the book, men are not that important, and I didn't choose it. It's true that these women were amazingly independent and strong, and that may be why I was so interested in them, even though I didn't realize it when that, you know, Elizabeth in many ways were very much ahead of her time. She was traveling. She was, you know, she was not what she was supposed to be as a wife and an empress. And Elisa Landi and Caroline are the same. I mean, they're very they're very strong, and they lead their lives, and it's not after I finished the book that I realized that I thought I had written the first years of Elisa Landi in Hollywood, her rising as a star, but then I realized that beside that, it was also the story of the end of her marriage, how she chose freedom against her husband. She leaves, you know, she abandoned her husband in London, and she comes to Hollywood, and after a few years she divorced, and she decides to lead her life. So yeah, there are very strong female characters in that book.
Yeah, and given the period of time, you know, it's amazing to see.
It is amazing.
All those other ladies around Cici or around Elisa and Caroline. So, as you mentioned, we discover aspects of Cici that most people didn't know about motherhood, for example.
Yeah.
Her freedom, you talked about it, her vanity. You quote her saying, "I am like the animals that abandon their little ones as soon as someone else has touched them." This is not the polished image we had of Cici. You know, it's so hard to hear that. Can you explain a little bit this part of her personality and who she was in reality?
Yeah, she was not such a good mother. Of course, I mean, she had she had some excuses, because her first children were she didn't have, well, she wasn't allowed to raise them really, so they were taken care of by her mother-in-law, Sophie, and she had the little girl died when she was very young. So and she, after the death, I think, of her first child, she kind of withdrew from she kind of let go, and then she had later, when she was well, she was not that old, but anyway, later she had this daughter, Valerie, who was born in Hungary, and she decided that child, which she was her fourth child, she would raise. And she was very exclusive. She was like stuffing her. I mean, she was or the opposite. She was just so much on this child. And then when Valerie married, she just, that's when she said, I'm like this animal who don't want to, once somebody else has touched them, she just didn't want to see her anymore. That was it. I mean, she had chosen her husband. She did not want to have anything to do with it. So it's weird. I mean, but it's certainly not the traditional mother. I mean, she was not a very good mother. She was not a very good wife to her husband. She
was not a very good person.
Well, she has, qualities, of course, but that's why my first writing projects was to write something like anti-Sissi. I mean, a portrait that would be totally different from the corny image we had. And in a way, I mean, that's what's been done in that film Corsage. I mean, it's did you see that film Corsage? I don't know. Yeah, it's closer to reality that anything that has been done before.
And even her love life, was very, very strange, because of course, if we attribute this daughter to her, it means she had a lover or lovers. And you don't know if that is true or
Well, everybody said, that was impossible, that she couldn't have had a lover. She was too, surrounded by ladies in waiting and so on. But then her sister, the Queen of Naples, she was queen. I mean, she was as surrounded as Elizabeth. And then she managed to have a secret child. I mean, that's true. That's for sure. I mean, she did have an affair with an officer so suddenly, I mean, it's not that impossible when you think about it, especially since Elizabeth was traveling around all the time. So it's unlikely, but it's possible. And it's certainly possible. She had a very strange relationship with Bay Middleton, and there is that book by Daisy Goodwin called The Fortune Hunter. And when it's a fiction, but she imagines that Elizabeth is having an affair with Bay Middleton, and it works. I mean, you really can think it's possible. It's very possible. Anyway, she had a very, at least sentimental connection with that man. And it's possible to think that it was more than that just sentimental.
So on the contrary, what is very touching in the book is the incredible relationship between Caroline and her daughter Elisa. They have both very strong personalities. We talked about it at a time when it was not easy for women. So tell us more about that relationship between them.
Yeah, well, I think Caroline, first of all, is a fascinating character. I mean, she herself, I mean, she abandoned her husband. She traveled to America with her husband to Montreal first, and then when Elisa Landi and her brother were really little, they were like 3 or 5 years old, and she herself abandoned her husband because they didn't get along together anymore, to travel to Vancouver alone with 2 little children. I mean, that at the time, and she took a job as a cook. She was from a very wealthy Jewish family. She started to give French and lessons, and she was hired as a cook. I mean, until she met this Count Zanardi that she finally married. So that is just totally amazing to me. I mean, she probably is, from all these women, Elisabeth, Caroline, and Elisa, Caroline is the strongest. And then for sure, I mean, she gave a very good education to Elisa. She spoke many languages. She was very cultivated, very educated, and she gave her daughter a very good education. And then, of course, I think she pushed her very hard to become a star. I mean, she herself probably wanted to be a princess, and she wanted her daughter to become a star, a movie star, and she ended up, I mean, she actually died in Hollywood, in this little paradise that Elisa Landi has bought in Hollywood. So she achieved her goal in the most amazing way, from somebody who, if she was not the daughter of the Empress, of course, if she was the daughter of the Empress, the story is different. But if she was not the story of the daughter of the Empress and just a Jewish, the daughter of a Jewish banker, I mean, it's just amazing what she achieved.
Yeah, and she had, like you describe in the book, she has just, this personality. She's a very social person, she's everywhere, even in London, even if they don't have that much money, she's invited.
She's very generous. She's very human. She's very, I mean, I totally, I didn't know anything about her, and because the only thing that I had read about her where this imposter, she's just this woman trying to pretend to be something else than what she really was. And when I discovered, the way I wrote this book is when I discovered the letters between Elisa and Caroline, and that was a treasure. I mean, because the personality of these two women, I mean, the humor, she's very, to me, it doesn't fit with the image of an imposter. She's very, I mean, self-deprecating. She has sense of humor about herself. She makes this somehow, I mean, it's still, I mean, I still don't have the real answer, because there are so many things which just don't work. I mean, and to me, there are, the personality of Caroline is very hard to think that she made up the whole story, except for the reason that I gave at the end of the book.
So now I would like to shift to history with a big H, and it's fascinating to read throughout the book the history of the United States and Europe, especially through the eyes of those women, including you. We go from Austria in the 1800s to today, through assassinations, wars, economic crisis, and social evolution within a little bit more than a century. It's fascinating to see everything that happens within this century that you go through.
Yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing, and well, in the end, we understand that the story might be the story of the darkest hours of that 20th century, because the reason might be the anti-Semitism that was at play at the very beginning of the century, even though in Vienna, I mean, the Emperor Franz Joseph was very good to Jews. I mean, also Vienna at the time was a place where many Jews from all over Europe came to be, because it was very liberal towards the Jews. They were allowed to do many things that they were not allowed to do in other countries. So anyway, But yeah, it is true that it's an amazing journey between Europe and the United States, and also the dream of America. I mean, there were many immigrants at the time many people who emigrates from Europe to United States. And there is this dream of America, which is very, very present in the book. As you know, Caroline just hates London. She keeps saying how much she hates this old world, and how much she loves America, and she dreams of America. And yeah, she dies just before the war, before Hitler and the war starts, the Second World War.
And you mentioned America, let's go to Hollywood. And you have this love-hate relationship with Los Angeles, and your description of the city is so accurate between, you know, the glitter that we see and the reality. And you write one day, when you go back to California, Los Angeles hadn't changed, giving the feeling that time there is suspended, and that the city and its inhabitants were frozen in an almost supernatural immobility. Can you explain those mixed feelings you have about Los Angeles? For you, I mean, you, Nelly.
Yeah, well, it's really strange, because to me, you know, I came from Paris, well, I'm from Brittany, but I was coming from Paris, and to see this city with nobody walking in the streets, I mean, that's so weird. Everybody, you know, travels by car, so there was nobody just walking, and people were in their villa near the swimming pool. So it's like you don't see any human movement always. And also, I didn't know anyone there, so I spent most of my time just in that house waiting for, yeah, it's, to me, it's always been very like nothing's happening. It's very strange. And it did not change when I came back. I was surprised, of course. Well, some restaurants have disappeared and others, but and most of my friends there, you know, who were actors, and they hated LA. They had to be there because they you know, that's where the work were for them. But they were more, you know, they wanted to live in New York. Even for actors, New York was much more exciting. And I didn't like New York that much. I'm scared. I was scared of New York. While LA, I'm like Elisa. I love California. I'm not sure I love LA that much, but I loved California. I loved the mountains, the ocean, also, you know, I love horseback riding, and the idea of, you know, being able to leave the city and go for a hike, or to ride. And I had friends who had ranches just of LA. I mean, to me, it still is. I mean, I love it. And at the same time, I recognize that when you don't work there, when you don't have something to do there, or you don't have friends, I mean, does not, you know, it's frightening. I mean, nothing is happening.
Mm. So your description of Elisa's Hollywood time is fascinating. We live in this cruel and glittering war, with her going from loneliness, you mentioned it, to fame and back again. So you really take the reader along the way with her. We have her feelings, we really live with her. There's a lot of your experience into that, because that's exactly what you were describing.
Not that much, because I never, you know, achieved stardom as she did. No, I mean, all of it comes from her letters to her mother, because she wrote, you know, it's incredible how much, I mean, those people wrote. I mean, she wrote 2 or 3 letters a week to her mother, and the same to her husband, and some to her brother too. So there are like 10 letters a week. I mean, and back, and the letters from her mother came to her 2 weeks later. So that's a little, but, and it was like a gold mine. I mean, when I first started to write this book, I hadn't met Caroline Thomas yet. And I started to imagine Elisa Landy's first years in Hollywood by reading Marlène Dietrich's biography and people, stars from that age biographies. There are no autobiographies because movie stars don't write. So, but then I just threw that away when I found Elisa's letters. Everything is in there. So, and
Yeah,
it's fascinating to read the letters and to see how, as you said, how she comes from hope to fame and then disillusion and loneliness finally.
Yeah, and we see also, how, the friendships she has and how it helps or doesn't help in that world, and the competition also with other actresses and some that you mentioned. It's really, we live through that golden age of movies. So
Yeah, and of course it resonated with, because I identified with that because it's so hard to make it as an actress. I mean, I feel that, and it's somehow, I've just felt, even though she achieved stardom in a way I didn't, but I felt that she had the same insatisfaction and disillusion that I had. So that's of course what I, was interested in.
And would you say that this fascination we have for Hollywood is linked to the entertainment world we all grew up in fact, because we have these like dreams versus the reality, and that in fact nothing comes easy, and that entertainment is only meant to make us forget about our life's hardship. So that's why we see only the glittering part, but the reality is different.
Yeah, of course. I mean, movie stars are the princesses of our time, and we feel that, that's where you want to be. But then I really think, I mean, being an actress is really hard, especially for women more than for an actor, because an actor, when he grows old, he still has interesting parts. And while an actress, and I mean, at that time, when you were 30 in Hollywood, you were old. I mean, it was finished for you. So, and it's still, I mean, not as much, but it's still a little bit the case. So, and growing old as an actress is very hard. I mean, yeah, I think it's not that as glamorous as it seems to be, and there's a lot of when you see all these stories of movie stars who destroyed themselves and got totally lost. I mean, even from Marilyn to so many others, you can see the dark side of Hollywood.
Yeah, definitely. And on a personal level for you, Nelly, you speak very openly about your life in the book, your feelings and the mental state you were in at one point, suffering from anorexia and very negative feelings you had about yourself. Did writing help you go through with all this?
No, really, it was finished when I started to write. I don't think to me, I mean, writing I don't think of writing as a therapy at all. I mean, I can't write about something that it's still painful. I can, I need distance to write and to make sense of it all. So no, it was long gone when I started. Long finished. So no, I didn't say this book helped, but it helps in the sense that, to me, writing from life, as I have done in 2 of my books at least, just helps to make sense of it, to make sense of it all. I mean, what fascinates, and the reason why I put my story in the book is to answer that question that so many people ask me, why are you so interested in that story? And I just couldn't answer that. I didn't know. And that's why I decided to write this book, somehow to find the answer. And when it's finished and I look at it now, I think, yeah, it kind of makes sense. There are lots of echoes that are fascinating to me, that connection that I feel towards Elisa Landi, and the fact that her daughter really welcomed me in her family with open arms. When I go to New York, I sleep in Elisa's room. I find it's just, this strange, weird connection. I feel, there's a sense to that. I mean, even though I don't believe that I'm a reincarnation of any, but it just give a sense to that story that, I needed to realize that I was not an actress, I was a writer, and I needed to write that story and to take on when Elisa gave up. I mean, and have and see my children grow and write books and stop being an actress.
Yeah. So you have studied engineering, then theater. You have been, as you said, an actress and author. And now, what are you passionate about?
I'm still passionate about writing, and I'm passionate about my horse. That's something else I have in common with Elisa. I bought my horse 2.5 years ago, and I have a horse in Fontainebleau near Paris, and I ride him 3 times a week, and I love it. And what else? Well, my children, my life, my writing, other books.
So what is your next project now?
I'm writing from a real story once again, not that happened to me, but that story that happened to a close friend of mine, and but I'd rather not talk about it yet. But it should be finished at the end of the year, I hope.
And you also are a producer, if I remember well. You do things, projects. You write for television.
Yeah, I am a screenwriter also. I write for this TV show.
Yeah, successful TV show on French television. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
been on for a long time. So can you tell us a little bit about it? We
know
about you.
I write dialogues, so I don't invent the story. I have the character. I'm given the characters and what happens to them, and it's like a puppet show. I make them speak.
Yeah, I think being an actress really helps do dialogues, because you know what they're expecting or how they can tell what you're writing. I'm sure that you have that in your head. You see the character, you know how they're going to say it.
Absolutely, it's like improvising. You know your character. You know this. You're given a situation, and you have to invent something which sounds real and is really in character. So yeah, so I do that.
And do you enjoy that? Because it's a totally different atmosphere.
It's because it's totally formatted. I mean, I have to write 24 pages, 250 lines, and it's the total contrary of a novel in which I have total freedom. I really invent my story, my character. I do it long, short, whatever. I mean, this is it's very complementary. I mean,
it's the best of both worlds, in fact, as you mentioned.
Perfect.
The freedom but loneliness of the writer, and the team effort, and being in, as you say, with guidelines, or being a screenwriter.
Absolutely.
and staying in the movie industry anyway, or at least entertainment industry. That was fascinating, really, Nelly. Thank you for sharing all that. We have a few questions from the audience. Isabelle, do you want to tell the questions?
I'll read them out. Yeah, thank you,
Okay,
Florence, and thank you so much, Nelly, for that wonderful explanation about your book and the history of CC and all these wonderful women. Our first question is from Liev. She says, the books that you mentioned having read in German, were they German or were they Austrian?
It's not the book. Well, the first book I read was by Conte Corti, and yeah, probably he was Austrian, but the language is German. And then I read the diary of the Countess, the Lady of Honor, who was in German and partly in Old German and part Hungarian, but that Hungarian I couldn't read.
Renee asks, she says she's curious as to the Proust connection and Orient Guermantes in Search of Lost Time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Proust connection is mainly because of the Queen of Naples, who is a character who was the Empress Elisabeth's sister, and who is a very intriguing character in Proust novel In Search of Lost Time. And to me, because he has her say, it's very interesting because she's the only real character in Proust work. I mean, all character in Proust novel are inspired by real people for sure, but they have other names, and you know, there has been a lot of who from, you know, who inspired such and such character. But the Queen of Naples is just called the Queen of Naples, and she's herself. And he has her say at some point after the death of the Empress, no, it's a very little mourning. I'm not very little mourning. It's my sister. I mean, which to me gave way of, you know, long expectation of why on earth did he invent such a story? Because I had this play that I wrote in which the Queen of Naples was so jealous of her sister, and she hated her. So the rivalry because between the two sisters was it fueled a lot of thinking and imagination for me about the jealousy and the rivalry between the two sisters.
Merci beaucoup. Isabelle asks, do you think that there are still hidden documents to be discovered on this mysterious daughter? And if yes, do you plan to keep looking for them?
Well, I think I haven't looked at all of them because there are, but I have in my possession probably most of what's about this hidden daughter. I don't think there is much more to find. No, I don't think so. I just don't. I could spend my entire life just going through all the letters and papers that Caroline Thomas gave me. So
are you? Sorry, Melissa.
No, go ahead, Florence.
Are you satisfied, Nelly, with the final answer you give in the book, or do you have doubts?
Not totally. To tell you the truth, I'm still, you know, in the book I tell about this grave in Saint-Germain-en-Laye where the supposedly adoptive mother of Caroline de Nardelandi, Nanette Kaiser, this Jewish woman, and her supposedly adoptive sister, Laura Kaiser, are buried. And the grave is expiring in 5 years now. So it will all go to common, how do you say that, la fosse commune. So since everybody, you know, is the concessions are for 100 years, so it will be over, and so I don't know what. And I have still the goal to make a DNA test with to try to open that grave and have a DNA test made to make sure that once that is done, if you know, we have the certainty that Caroline Thomas is the great granddaughter of this woman, then the question for me will be answered. But I still have a doubt. I'm still not sure. There's too many things that don't really completely click.
And what about DNA tests with the imperial family, or
with Sissi? Yeah, actually, Stéphane Bern, who was very interested in the story, put me in touch with an anthropologist who did the expertise of the Henry IV skull and anyway, he did all that stuff. And he told me having a DNA test, we don't even need to go to archdukes and so on, because in Geneva, the Hotel Beau Rivage, there's a small, where Sissi was assassinated, there's a small museum, and they keep the dress that she was wearing when she was murdered, and there's blood on it. And so we also have brushes with her hair, so we have plenty of DNA. He told me, I didn't know that, but he told me we have plenty of DNA of Elizabeth, so it's actually kind of easy to compare. But I'd rather make sure first that she's not the granddaughter of the Nanette Kaiser before going to the Empress.
Okay. So the mystery goes on, and we'll meet in a few years for a sequel of the book.
I hope I will have the definite answer. I hope I have a good hope that I will manage to really have the final answer to that question.
Thank you very much, Nelly. I don't know if we have other questions from the audience, Melissa, or...
No, I think that covers it.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's dark now behind you. You're in Paris. It's almost 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. So thank you for staying with us for so long.
No, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure
having you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci et bonne soirée. À la prochaine.
Merci.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.